call this meeting of the Person County Board of County Commissioners to order at this time. Commissioner Powell, would you say your invocation, please?
If you desire, would you pray with me, please? Heavenly Father and Almighty God, we thank you for the opportunity of assembling here tonight. Thank you for the blessings of the day, the gifts of life. And Father, help us to acknowledge your presence in this meeting tonight as we conduct the business of the county. And we pray that our decisions will be right and noble and in the best interest of the people of Person County. Pray your blessings on the scouts who are here tonight, the young people who will lead us tomorrow. And we ask these blessings in thy name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Could I get the scouts to come up front and lead our pledge, please?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Item number one, resolutions of appreciation. We have Pamela Wood and Edwin Outlaw. Would y'all come up, please? Pam, I'm going to do yours first. Pamela Wood, resolution of appreciation. Whereas Pamela Wood has served the people of Person County during her tenure as a social worker 2 with the Department of Social Services. Whereas Pamela Wood has served the citizens of Person County with honor, integrity, sincerity, and dedication, providing accurate, concise services for 17 years, July 2000 to November 2017. And whereas Pamela Wood has earned the respect and admiration of all who have known her and worked with her throughout her career. And whereas the County of Person recognizes the many contributions Pamela Wood has made to the county and offers her sincerest best wishes for her retirement. Now therefore, I, Tracy Kendrick, Chairman of the Person County Board of Commissioners, do hereby extend this resolution of appreciation to Pamela Wood for continually striving to make Roxborough and Person County a better place to live and work. Adopted this day, the 4th day of December 2017. Thank you.
Thank you.
Would you like to say anything?
Well, I'm grateful. Person County DSS hired me twice, and the first time was 5 weeks out of college, so I was thrilled. And I had the opportunity to pursue a career in my choosing. And I'm thankful that I could serve Person County families, children, and elderly and disabled for so many years. This is my home, and I'm real happy that I was able to do things to make this a good place to live. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Mr. Outlaw? Yes, sir. Resolution of appreciation. Whereas Edwin Outlaw has served the people of Person County during his tenure working for the Person County as a transit specialist with the Person County Area Transportation System. And whereas Edwin Outlaw has served the citizens of Person County with honor, integrity, sincerity, and dedication, providing accurate, concise services for 7 years, November 2010 through November 2017. And whereas Edwin Outlaw has earned the respect and admiration of all who have known him and worked with him throughout his career. And whereas the County of Person recognizes the many contributions Edwin Outlaw has made to the county and offers him sincerest best wishes for his retirement. Now therefore, I, Tracy Kendrick, Chairman of the Person County Board of Commissioners, do hereby extend this resolution of appreciation to Edwin Outlaw for continually striving to make Roxborough and Person County a better place to live and work. Adopted this day, the 4th day of December 2017. Thank you. Say a few words.
First of all, giving God the honor and the praise for this accomplishment. You know, I thank you all for this. And but I didn't do it by myself, but I am appreciative for the opportunity to be able to serve the county. And I tried to do it in a professional way, that it would be a positive reflection on the county itself for the services that we provide. And I also like to take this opportunity to thank my supervisor, who has guided me into the way we do our business with the county. And it was a great opportunity to serve the public. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And we have one more certificate, and the gentleman isn't here tonight, Charles White Evans, and he had, 11 years of service. So we'll get that to him. At this time, I'm gonna hand the gavel over to Ron Aycock, our attorney, to preside over the meeting for a few moments, so we can do organization of the board. So, thank you, Ron.
Board, thank you, sir. It is the tradition in Person County that the county attorney preside over the transition in leadership of the board. State law requires the board to organize itself each year at the first meeting in December. Our procedure will be that I will call for nominations for the office of chair and seek additional nominations, close the nominations, and then seek the vote of the board. It is also our tradition that once the chair is elected, the chair presides over the election of the vice chair. After that, going a little flip-flop back and forth, after that, it's a tradition that the county attorney preside for one agenda item, and that's some required approval of bonds. So, Mr. Chairman and board members, it's time to elect your leadership for the ensuing year. Are there nominations for the office of Chair of the Board of County Commissioners?
Nominate Tracy Kendrick.
Mr. Kendrick has been nominated. Are there other nominations? Are there other nominations? Hearing no other nominations, do I hear a motion to close the nominations and elect Mr. Kendrick by acclamation?
So moved.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Motion has been made to close the nominations for the office of chair and to elect Tracy Kendrick as chair. All those in favor, please vote yes or aye. Let's do it the other way. All those in favor, raise your hands so the clerk can know. Appeared to be a unanimous vote, so congratulations, Mr. Chairman. You are re-elected. The tradition now is for you to conduct the election for the vice chair.
At this time, we're going to accept nominations for the election of the vice chairman of the Board of Commissioners. Do we have any nominations?
Nominate Gordon Powell.
Nominate Ray Jeffers.
Okay. Are there any further nominations? Would either one like to say anything? Hearing no other nominations and no one wanting to speak up, all those in favor of Gordon Powell to be elected as vice chairman, please indicate by raising your right hand. All right. So it's a 3-2 vote. So Gordon Powell will be vice chairman for this next year. Thank you. Item number 2 on the agenda is approval of the bonds, and this is where I'll hand it back over to County Attorney Ron Aycock.
I get to be the presider for a short time. One more agenda item. State law also requires that the bonds for faithful performance of the duties of several offices of the county be approved by the board each year in December. Those bonds are for the finance director, the register of deeds, the tax administrator, and the sheriff. State law provides for the amounts of those bonds. For your information, the sheriff's bond is in the amount of statutory amount of $25,000, register of deeds $50,000, and $100,000 each for the tax administrator and the finance director. Approval of those bonds are necessary for those officials to continue their duties and to enter upon their duties. So I would ask for a motion to approve those bonds which I just specified.
Motion to approve the bonds.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor of approving the bonds of those county officials, please indicate by raising your hand. By unanimous vote, the bonds have been approved. I have completed my duties, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Moving on, discussion and adjustment on approval of the agenda. Mr. Jeffers has requested that we remove item number 7 and move it to the first meeting in January. So we'll strike item number 7. Are there any other adjustments to the agenda?
Mr. Chairman, I need to add something for the request by the Department of, I guess it's DHS, for an appointment of a
Nominating committee.
commissioner to the nominating committee.
All right.
Add that at the end if you desire.
Yes, sir. We'll add that to make it item number 11 for cardinal nominations for the committee to put a board together. Are there any more adjustments?
Move for approval.
Is there any further discussions? We have a motion on the table to approve the agenda. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it. All right. We have public hearing next on the agenda, item number 3, the addition of Cantor Creek Trail, a private roadway. Do I hear a motion to open public hearing?
So moved.
All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, Ms. Vaughn.
Good evening. As our addressing ordinance dictates, when a third home is added on a private driveway, we are required to name that private driveway. A citizen has applied for a permit to build a new home, and it will be the third home on the driveway, so we thusly are asking to name that driveway tonight. His relatives and the neighbor have decided on the name Cantor Creek Trail. It was a unanimous decision, and after some discussion, we decided that was the best way to move forward for the people in that area. So my recommendation is to approve the roadway name.
All right. Do we have anyone from the public that signed up to speak? All right. Any questions for Ms. Vaughn?
Move to close public hearing.
Have a motion on the table to close the public hearing. Any discussion? All those in favor of closing public hearing, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, item number 4, consideration to grant or deny the request for an additional private roadway, Cantor Creek Trail. What is the pleasure of the board?
Move for approval.
All right, we have a motion on the table to approve Cantor Creek Trail as presented. Any further discussion? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right. At this time, we have informal comments. We have no one that signed up to speak, so we can move on. Item number 5, discussion and adjustment and approval of the consent agenda. Is there any discussion or adjustments?
Move to approve consent agenda.
All right, we have a motion on the table. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of approving the consent agenda, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it. Unfinished business, item number 6, fire tax consideration. Mr. Jones.
This
this one may not be as fast as the rest of the agenda has been.
That's all right, that's why we got it out of the way.
Very good. At your November meeting, you received information from Chief Rimmer and Chief Wren concerning the establishment of a service district for fire tax. Actually, I think they had a different name, some kind of contracted fire rescue service district. I'd like to go over some of the requirements to set up a district and some of the things that district would do and would not do, just for clarification for you. They did mention something called a fire commission at that meeting, and I want to make it clear to the board that a fire commission would be an advisory role only. The establishment of a fire service district would not set up a different way of distributing money. The commission would still have control over how that money was distributed. Another thing that's been tossed around is whether or not the city would be included in a service district. And the city could be included if the city did, by resolution, agree to be included. And if they were, the county would be the ones who were responsible for the money. One thing you got to think about with a fire service district is that money that comes into that fund is earmarked for fire service, which could be a good thing. However, that does not guarantee funding for any particular year. Every year, the commissioners are charged with setting the tax rate for the general fund. So you could actually set the tax rate for the general fund, which we've had at 70 cents for many years, and you could adopt a fire service tax district rate. That does not bind future boards from having a similar rate or a higher or no rate. So you're not really guaranteeing funding for a fire department by saying a fire tax, because that tax will be set at a 0 rate and they don't get any money that year. A couple of requirements to set up a fire district are some timelines that are very important. There's 4 things you have to do to create a fire district, and you have to demonstrate there are need for the service to be provided, which everyone can agree. That's pretty straightforward. The next thing you have to do is say the proposed services cannot be provided to the district on a county-wide basis, and that one's a little bit more gray, but I think we can get beyond that. And the service cannot be provided without unreasonable, or that the service can be provided without burden, and that there is a demand and need for the service. So those are the 4 things you have to do in order to even start talking about a fire district. If you decide you want to go that route, you have to actually develop maps to show where the fire district would be. If we're doing a 1 district, 1 rate, basically the service would be the entire county, and that's very straightforward. That's the way you need to go if you're going to do a separate district. You could include everything outside the city, or include the city if the city wanted to be included by resolution. You actually, if you set up a new district, you would have to let the Department of Revenue know by November 1, because they do a lot of state appraised properties. That would not be an issue with the plan that's submitted to you at your November meeting, because you're using a district that's already there. You must hold a public hearing after you've displayed the maps to the public at least 4 weeks before you put it up for a vote. So you got to publish these maps showing where it's going to be. And like you said before, if it's the entire county, that's real easy. Everybody knows what the map would look like, but you do have to publish that and have a public hearing 4 weeks after you did the initial publication. And the fire tax must take effect at the beginning of the fiscal year. You can't do it mid-year. That's by statute. What that creates after that is a couple of other issues that need to be resolved. The distribution of funds. So the fire departments at this point, the plan submitted by Chief Rimmer and Chief Wren was to distribute money based on their formula, and Chief Rimmer has done a lot of work coming up with his formula, and it may actually be a good answer for this year. But as the funds and their needs change per department, I think you'll be faced again with how to distribute the money. You can't distribute based on where the dollars came from, because they're using this, the formula they're using is based on dispatch lines, not on the ISO lines. And dispatch lines were used so they could not split a house into 2 different districts. But that's not that's administrative line, not a legal boundary line, so you can't use that. Which means all the money that comes into one pot has to be split based on whether the commissioners feel the formula should be. It could be what Chief Rimmer's proposed, and that may work for a year or 2, and maybe something different down the road. I don't think you'll be out of the fire department discussion just by doing a fire tax. Another thing that comes up is the distribution of the money. Right now, I believe the fire departments get their money at the beginning of the fiscal year. Under a fire tax, you would probably want to distribute the money as it's received. So they won't be getting their check in July. They will be getting a very small check in July or at the end of July. And then they would get most of the money in the month of January after we did our December collections. So that would impact their cash flow. I guess the county could come up with a way to loan them the money temporarily if that was an issue, but it's definitely something to consider. If you decide to do a fire tax and you want to make sure the tax bills went out early July like we do now, we would need some guidance from the board. That's the direction you're heading. We have to reconfigure software. We have to notify the DMV to add that fire tax to all the properties. And we have to get our mailing vendor ready to have that action on those statements and everything. So we would need some headway. I'd like to know by May 1st if you're heading that direction. If you can't let us know before June 30th, of course, that's acceptable. The bills may just be a few weeks later going out than they usually are. Doesn't really create a whole lot of problem, but the sooner we know, the better. And if you ever decided that you wanted to go with separate districts and separate fire department and change all the parcel lines, that would actually take about a year's notice to get that in place. So what they're proposing today is not that year's notice. If we knew by May 1, it'd be pretty much painless to put in place. If we knew June 30, we could still make it happen. It'd just be a little late getting bills out. Just to show that not all counties who have fire tax problems went away, Vance County this past weekend had an article in their paper saying that they had a fire tax for over 10 years and they're still arguing over who gets the money. They're getting $60,000 per station, and one station has some debt and they're trying to figure out what to do without the fire tax, about paying that debt. So it doesn't relieve you of the responsibility of how to deal with fire tax every year. Any questions?
Sybil, what was the increase they asked for? What was that dollar amount?
It was slightly over 500,000.
And what is 1 penny on the current tax rate? Not a fire tax, but our property tax. What does 1 penny currently generate?
$438,931.
Then you hit the city and everybody by doing that. So
That's correct.
Potentially 1.5 cents will cover that increase that they were looking for. And although that does not commit this board to funding that or future boards, but that's where you could find that money rather quickly.
Yeah,
without going through all the 4 steps and the 5 and the 10 and the 12 that you just talked about.
Correct. It is, if the board decided to give them more money out of the general fund, that would be a very simple way of doing it. And you could give them the same amount next year, and the next year, and the next year. It's like fire tax. You could not give it to them the next year if you chose to do that. By taxing in the general fund, it generates $439,000 a year. If you didn't include the city, you're looking at $376,000. So there's a $63,000 difference, including the city, not including the city. So more bang for your penny if you do it just off the general tax rate.
I just think it behooves the county and if we could work with them on figuring out some type of formula. That way, before the money's funded every year, they know what they'll be getting and we know what we're funding. And if we could come up with that, they could be paid out of general fund or how we decide to pay it. But that helps us and you all when you're preparing the budget, and that helps them when they're preparing their budgets for what they're going to have to run off the year. And we know some years that may be harder than others, or vice versa, but we might come up with something at that time. But I think a set formula where we understand what we're giving them. The formula we have now is just not working. The whole one station gets 40,000 and 2 stations get this. All calls aren't created equal. I've served on their board now starting 9 years, and if you hear running, you have to send the same amount of people for a stump tow call as you do for a heart attack. You don't know what you're going into when you get that call from 911, and generally they're the time our first responders. Have we looked at, let's say, a CELFO, let's say the district I'm in, where a lot of the homes in Hyco Lake, if let's say they were non-existent and everybody's homeowner insurance went up out there on the lake, do we have an idea if they go from 9S or whatever their ISO rating is now to the highest there is, what possibly their homeowner insurance will go up to compared to if we raise it a penny on our tax rate? Do we know that?
I don't know that. I've seen some numbers previously. Sybil had ran some
Mr. Wren
reports.
stated that at the last meeting. I'm not sure exactly what the numbers are. know that when we looked at it quite a few years ago, maybe 3 years ago, you know, there's some savings for the ISO going down in terms of the.
No, I understand that. What I'm asking is, if we were to raise the tax rate a penny, and that would add, I don't know, let's say $75 or something on somebody's tax bill. If they did not have a fire department in their district and their homeowner insurance went up, would that be more than $75, or would it be less?
I want to say, did you say
Sure.
in the 60s or something?
I'd be happy
No,
to do some research.
I know we don't have the
know.
answer now, but I want
Yeah.
to see that.
Okay, sure.
And
no
then,
problem.
But raising the taxes a penny for the average taxpayer of a house is $135,000. You're raising their taxes $13.50.
okay, so what are the general statutes on providing fire service? Are there any statutes that require the county to provide fire? So let's say Cepho decides they're not going to do anything, we can just leave that area uncovered for the county?
That would be a
You
question for the
could.
county attorney.
Legally, you could. Yes.
Would be pretty.
No, it wouldn't be nice.
On the individual districts you were talking about, if you did that, wouldn't there be a fire committee in each district that would set the tax rate? Or recommend to the Board of Commissioners what that tax rate would be? My understanding, that's what some counties have. They like in, with Cepho or Timberlake.
So if you
Cepho
had-
might say they need a penny, and Timberlake might say they need 3. So then they would come to the commissioners and say, okay, we want you to adopt this tax rate for us. This is what we want to tax ourselves, but they've got to get the people in their district to agree to that.
So what you run across when in your separate district is that 1 year long process of having to redraw all the lines so that one house potentially could be in 4 different districts if it's in a corner. So you have to redraw those lines so you can define where those districts are. And another good example would be a bill like DirecTV. That's a very small bill, but what you have to do is DirecTV, they have those set-top boxes in your house that they own. They tell me how many are in the city and how many are not in the city and the value of those. They would have to tell me for every fire district where those things are, so I could tax that district correctly. And then when your district collected $1, you would get your $1 for that district. That's what you have to put in place to do separate districts. And almost every county that has separate districts is trying to get away from it. It's an administrative nightmare. But yes, in your theory there, each one would submit a budget, and the commissioner would control what tax rate to set for that district. You still have control over it. But the dollars collected will stay in that district.
I understand exactly what you're saying, because I think the counties that I've talked to about it have tried to get away from that.
It is a nightmare.
Russell, what is 1 cent on the sales tax?
I don't have any clue on sales tax. I don't know if finance is listening. I don't do anything on sales tax.
Amy.
Okay.
I'll ask Amy. She's in her office.
How much are we getting from, okay, we raised occupancy tax years ago, and the tourism board has decided that, correct?
Mhm.
How much money are we generating from that? We should find that out. And then
Okay.
we take over the tourism board, and then we can direct that money where we want it to go.
I don't think you can do that, Dustin.
I'm just throwing a pitch in there to take over the tourism board.
I
I wanted that on the mic.
Is the,
That's where, that's where it comes from.
They're giving money to, the school. I don't know how much that has to do with tourism, but I just wanted to get that in on a public comment there, so it's on the record. All right, back to the fire department.
Back to one of your first
So-
comments you made about the formula not being correct, or the formula need to be adjusted. You could adjust the formula either way. You could adjust the formula and keep it in the general fund, or adjust the formula for the new fire tax. So the formula needing to be adjusted is a very good point, but that's not dependent on having the fire tax to do that. You could adjust the formula with or without it.
Is there a set number of people that cannot be on the fire commission, like our EDC and board and so on? So we could put each chief as far as the fire commission, they can make the recommendation of where the money goes if there was like a pool of money there from a service tax?
But the fire commission is not a North Carolina general statute defined board.
So we could do it where we want?
You could do whatever you want to, unless the county attorney knows something
No
different.
requirement.
It's
You
your
don't
advisory
have to
board
have
you
it.
set up, and you can have as few or as many on there as you want it.
So for the departments that have debt, let's say they decide they're not gonna provide fire service anymore in the county because we can't agree on funding, what happens to that debt?
My understanding, and this is coming from the chiefs, is that their articles of incorporation has already defined if they're dissolved, what happens to the equipment and remaining assets of the fire department. I don't know the legal behind that. That's just what I was told by the chiefs.
You wouldn't say
So if the fire department went away, what happens to their equipment?
If the fire department is a nonprofit corporation, then typically, and we'd have to look at the charter, typically in order to maintain its tax exempt status, the assets on dissolution would have to go to a nonprofit entity. They could come to a government entity, but it usually goes to another nonprofit entity. But that's going to be governed by what their articles of incorporation say.
What if there are no assets, only debt?
If there are no debts, then
No, what if there were no assets, only debt?
if there are only debts and no assets, then the risk would be that on the person who provided the money, and they would not get repaid. If there's sort of the blood in the turnip concept, if there's no assets but there are debts, somebody loses.
Is Doug here?
I'm not sure.
What would happen to our response time if they were to go away?
I can't address that.
I mean, what impact would that have on our Person County EMS?
It would have to be much less.
With the numbers that they gave, as far as, let's say, the county went to the fire business and we had to hire people, buy trucks, put up apartment, were those numbers pretty accurate that they showed?
I heard those numbers discussed, but I have not seen that final spreadsheet, so I have not seen that.
I
So,
haven't seen it either. We haven't seen it.
It was the significance of it was 13 million or 16 million.
well, I imagine if an ambulance costs what? What we paying for
250,
ambulance? $200-some thousand? So I
250.
imagine fire trucks are pretty expensive.
And then the fire stations and all the other equipment, it could get into millions quick, yes, sir.
So probably safe to say the county doesn't want to be in the fire business.
We're in the fire business.
Yeah, but for a very small fee.
That's right.
For a very small fee compared to if the county had to do it on their own. I don't know. I just feel like a broken record saying that we need to figure out something to provide to these fire departments because they provide a service that obviously will cost us a lot more money if the county went into it, a lot more than a penny, a lot more than a nickel. If we were going to be in the county fire business, I mean, if you ask the residents, at least the ones I've talked to, a lot of times when they have a call out in the county, they're your first responders, they're the first ones on the scene. The fatal accident last year, right there by stop sign on Concord Selfo and Highway 57, the first person there was Selfo Fire Department, and I know that because he left my house and went to respond. He was the first one on the scene. So I think we better seriously take a look at this.
How many, what's the number amount on how much we spend out of our general fund every year for unmandated services? About 16 million, thereabouts.
I don't have that number.
I think I remember looking at it at some point, and it's somewhere around 16 million. So, government should be in the business for helping its citizens and making sure that they stay safe. So providing services for fire departments and police departments is a service that's not mandated. What police department is, fire department's not. But we have other things that we spend money for here in the general fund that aren't mandated and are not as important as the fire departments are. I'd like to make a motion that moving forward, we cut 10% out of our unfunded services, our unmandated services, and utilize, rather than getting 1.5 cents on the dollar, that when we move forward during budget session, we cut 10% out of our unmandated services, and we would come up with $1.65 million that we could utilize rather than the $600,000 that we've been talking about for about 6 months. And I'll make that in the form of a motion.
Mr. Chairman.
Is sheriff patrol mandated by the state?
General statutes.
Sheriff's only in charge
The
of the jail
patrol
and
part is
detention, but not the patrol. Is that correct?
That's
So
correct.
is that part of your non-mandated funding?
we're mandated to provide a sheriff's
The
department.
sheriff is only statutorily responsible for detention, for the jail and courts. Is that correct?
You are mandated to provide for a sheriff, and you must provide one deputy to sheriff. Beyond that, you have no statutorily required funding for the sheriff.
So I think it's a little premature to vote for a motion to just say we're going to cut 10% unmandated funding until we actually know all the ramifications of that.
I agree with Ray on that as well. I think if you, cutting 10% across the board, I've heard that there may be another project where we may be able to get some funding as well. So I think jumping into the budget is a little bit premature at this time, and getting back to the sales tax question. If you raise it 1/4%, or I know we did at one point have a referendum on the ballot, I want to say back in 2012, it was for education.
We did it twice.
We did it twice.
Mhm.
And I think if you're going to have any type of tax increase, I think a sales tax where you're affecting the consumer, they are willingly making a purchase knowing they're going to be paying a tax increase, as opposed to having just a blind 1 cent property tax rate increase, which any board past this board can overturn and use that funding wherever they want to go. And it's not earmarked. I'm not saying that sales tax can be earmarked either, but from a tax perspective, I feel that a sales tax, not saying that I would support it, but a sales tax would be, I think, more fair to the property owners, and I would even be willing to, once we get some figures, consider having that on a referendum on the ballot.
Mr. Chairman,
Who has to do that? Does it-
I would recommend that we table this till we get into the budget discussions. I'll make that as a substitute motion.
All right, we have a motion and a substitute motion on the table. Is there any further discussion? All right, we'll vote on the substitute motion first, and that's by Commissioner Clayton to table this issue until the budget session comes around in February. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, ayes have it. Item number 8, changes to the Person County Animal Services adoption fee. Mr. Shaw.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
We've got two things we really need to talk about. We're losing money on adopting out the animals. We're providing several services now with shots and checking for heartworms, a whole lot more things that we're doing that we weren't doing in the past. And that's why you're seeing the price increase. If you go around other counties, Mrs. Oakley has researched it, it's from $25 to $200 and some dollars. So I'm requesting an increase from $100 to $150.
Ron, explain to us a little bit about the adoption fee right now. So if you adopt a dog at $150 and then they get that dog neutered or spayed, is there some that's refunded, or is that we don't do that anymore?
Okay, I brought our shelter manager with us. She's going to answer them questions. She's in charge of adoption.
Currently we adopt for 100. They currently get, I brought it with me, just a rabies vaccine if they're old enough, parvo distemper, and then they'll get wormed, and then they'll get a voucher. So it's not guaranteed that they're already spayed or neutered before they leave.
So they get a voucher to go get spayed and neutered. And where can they use that
We
at?
only have one vet that participates in that, and that's Woodsdale.
Okay.
And we're not as high of a rate of spay neuters that we'd like to see.
That's the only place the voucher's good for is Woodsdale?
We used to be with Halifax in Virginia, Roxborough and Woodsdale, and the other two dropped out.
Now, another added benefit to this, we're starting to have our animals spayed and neutered before they're adopted out, a particular amount of animals. So they're already spayed and neutered. We've been working toward that goal for several years, and Kelly's finally got us there. So I really appreciate her doing that.
Does that 75 cover the total? I mean, what is Woodsdale charging? I mean, is that?
Really the $75 only covers the spay neuter. They add an additional 20 or 25 for the heartworm and the rapid combo test for cats.
No, I was just wondering, what if we sent them to spayed or neutered before they were adopted, and you just kept the 150 and don't give them a voucher?
You can do that on some cases, but when the pet's not.
So I imagine we got to pay in that. Okay, I see that.
Yeah.
But I imagine we're paying her back once she turns the voucher into the county somehow. We're refunding her that $75. So what if we just go ahead and send them over there to get spayed and neutered ahead of time? That way, when they leave y'all, they're done.
Well,
There's
see,
no voucher.
That's what we're doing.
That's what's
That's what you're
happening
doing
now. If it wasn't for our rescue groups, some of them agreed to, like, if we get a dog spayed or neutered and we have trouble marketing it or moving the animal, then the rescue will come in and take the animal for us and pay for the cost of the spayed and neutered. So the taxpayer is not biting the burden on any of this.
They pay for all the vaccines as well.
So out of all this that we have at our desk, it's not in our packet. Nothing else is changing. Just a 150, just a 100 to 150.
I have one other thing. We had in the budget, I requested the rabies vaccination for $10, and it was approved in the budget. We just need to officially make that amount from $8 to $10 as it shows on here.
Okay.
Move to approve the recommended changes.
There's a motion on the table to approve the recommended changes. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the changes, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, item number 9, Board of Commissioners 2018 schedule of meetings. Ms. York.
Yes. Good evening, Commissioners. I have an easy agenda item for you. Before you is your schedule of meetings for 2018. You know that general statutes require that you hold at least one official board meeting a month. So we've taken into consideration several of the conferences that you all attend, 2 NACO conferences as well as the North Carolina Association Conference, to make sure that there were no conflicts in this that would interfere with either of those. And I'll also note that your first February meeting that's proposed, we are tentatively planning for a board retreat that day, which would be all day. And if a meeting falls on a day other than a Monday, it is noted on this proposed schedule.
So didn't we do something different this year with September? We didn't meet the following Tuesday. We went like to the next Monday.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sometimes we do make changes as the board requests.
It'll probably change once or twice throughout the year.
Oh, I didn't know if we did it now or if we did it later.
I
Didn't you
think
bring
we-
it up?
I think
We've done it both
I think I
ways.
did it later last, so
Nobody did.
I mean, if there's a
I'd like
conflict.
to propose one change at least, because I'd moved some stuff around on my schedule to accommodate Monday meetings, and I've got a Tuesday meeting all day out of town on February the 20th. We only have one meeting in March, and I would like to request that we move the February 20th meeting that's on a Tuesday to February the 26th, which is the following Monday, and it would be a 9 a.m. meeting.
Okay.
What are we doing?
Moving the February 20th meeting from that Tuesday to the following Monday, which would be February the 26th at 9 a.m. If it's okay with the rest of the board members.
Okay, I can make that change.
Is there any further discussion on the budget?
One question, December 3rd, 2018, why is that 6:30 and everything else been set?
Because you have
We
to,
did the
people,
organizational
new
meeting,
people, get them.
the swearing in of the new
Okay, well, I
commissioners.
swear, I agree with
Yeah.
It's a good question, though.
You thought I was trying to
Don't
expand your
eat
meeting a little
supper
bit.
late that night. Is there any other discussion about the agenda, schedule of meetings?
Move for approval.
All right, with the change of February 20th to February the 26th, the rest of the agenda staying the same. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it. Item number 10, 2018-19 budget calendar.
Yes. Another housekeeping item for you. We've proposed a budget calendar for your fiscal year 18-19 budget process. Just a couple of highlights for y'all to consider. Again, is the board retreat for February 5th. The capital improvement plan would be adopted in April ahead of the proposed budget. The proposed budget would come to you in May, and then you're required to hold a public hearing on that budget. We have that slated for June 4th with potential adoption for June 18th. Any questions about the budget calendar or changes that you would like to make?
Move to adopt a budget calendar.
There's a motion on the table to adopt the budget calendar. Is there any further discussion?
I thought we normally would have a budget work session after the public hearing, before the predicted adoption on the 18th.
Yeah, so we've just set a block of time, you'll see, from May 22nd through June 15th for potential work sessions. And we tend to keep that flexible depending on the subjects and the complexities of some of the changes that the board likes to make. In the past couple of years, we've actually waited to have our work sessions until the public hearing is conducted, but this just gives you some flexibility by setting aside, several weeks that you could hold those work sessions, either before or after the public hearing.
Just looks more transparent if we already had it scheduled to have one, instead of saying that we might have one or we might not because we got a block of time. Because we changed that just because we wanted to be somewhat transparent with the public by why allow them to come and speak on a budget and then we adopt it the same day, or we adopt it on the 18th without discussing it between the time that they have talked about their concerns with it.
Okay.
And so,
Would you like the work sessions then to reflect June 5th through June 18th as a potential?
What I said is in the record, so I
It's
think
the
when we get to that.
Do you want me to note it on the budget
I would.
calendar? Okay, I'll make that change. Anything else?
We have a motion on the table to adopt it as written, so would you guys propose?
Would you amend your budget to accept my
Would you amend it, or would you?
my notation?
My motion reflects Commissioner Jeffers' recommendations.
All right, so we have a motion on the table. Any further discussion?
Got it.
All those in favor of adopting the budget calendar as amended by Commissioner Jeffers, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Item number 11, Cardinal Innovations nominations for the nominating committee. Cardinal Innovations has asked that we present a county commissioner to come and be a part of DHHS nominating committee to put people on a board and work with Cardinal, since they've had some issues recently and the state has taken the organization over. They are wanting a board put in place to officiate over it. So
I nominate Vice Chairman Powell.
All right, at this time we have a nomination
So we
for
pay you the big bucks.
Vice Chairman Powell. Is there any further nominations? Hearing none, is there any discussion? All in favor of Vice Chairman Powell for the Cardinal Nominations Committee, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you, Commissioner Powell.
Thank you.
Chairman's report, I have nothing to report at this time. We have a ribbon cutting that will be on Friday at Savannah Jack's on Courthouse Square. I don't know the exact address, but if anybody knows where Toofy's Cafe used to be for about 80 years, that's exactly where it's at, but it's called Savannah Jack's now. So if you're out and about on Friday at about 11:30, come by Savannah Jack's and do the ribbon cut. So
Will you be there?
I will be there.
Yeah, okay.
Yep. Ms. York has nothing. Commissioner Jeffers? Commissioner Clayton?
Just want to remind the commissioners, we have Jingle on Main on this Thursday. It's always a well-attended event. I think they're having a few new contests, but it does really kick off the holiday season in Person County. So if you have an opportunity to mosey on up the Main Street, I'm sure it'd be you wouldn't be disappointed.
Vice Chairman? All right, at this time, I'd entertain a motion to go into closed session. A motion to enter into closed session per General Statute 143-318.11A5 to establish or instruct the public body staff or negotiating agents concerning the position to be taken on or on behalf of the public body in negotiating the price and other material terms of a contract with the following individuals permitted to attend: County Manager Heidi York, Clerk to the Board Brenda Reeves, County Attorney Ron Aycock, Assistant County Manager Sybil Tate, Curtis Guston, Upper Piedmont Division Manager Greg Duhan, Republic General Manager Matt Einsman, Environmental Manager Drew Eisenhower, Republic Area President, and Steve Weber, Republic's Legal Counsel.
It's more of them than us.
Gang it up. Entertain a motion to go into closed session.
So moved.
All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.